I wonder if you've gone through this. You're standing in front of the kitchen sink, there's like 3 dishes in the sink, and suddenly 4 hours have gone by and you haven't washed any of them and you don't know where the time went. Welcome to the StayiN Wild and Well podcast. My name is Rin and my greatest accomplishment is being alive. Here we talk about life's journey, the ups, the downs, the in-betweens, all things mental health, body, mind, and spirit. We share wild stories and keeping your wild alive while staying well. You want to go for a walk, you know it would be good for you, you feel like it would feel good, but you can't bring yourself to do it. You have this massive to-do list and you feel like the day is going to be productive, but you didn't get anything done. You sat on the couch at 7 a.m. and suddenly it's like 3:30 and you don't know where the time went, the TV wasn't on, and you didn't actually do anything. So where did time go? You're standing there and there's this uncomfortability in your body, feels shaky, and all you can manage to do is bring yourself to a bathtub and sit in the bathtub, and suddenly the tears start to come. This is the freeze response. And if you have gone through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it is a part of our survival mechanisms. And that's what this video is about today. The fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. This video is for you if you understand what all of these are, but you don't necessarily know how to move through them. This video is for you if you don't know what they are and you're looking to understand how they show up. This video is for you if you are experiencing one of these and you had never experienced it before, because I had never experienced freeze until I never really understood it. I remember telling people, you just got to pull yourself out of bed. You just got to get yourself out there. You just got to push yourself for the walk. Realizing now, that isn't necessarily the best advice, because when you are frozen in time, you can't actually access that. So maybe there's one of these that you haven't experienced before. I'm going to walk you through what it might show up as or what it might look like, and provide tools to all of these to help you navigate them. Or there's someone in your life who maybe has judged you for being in one of these experiences, because I've also been on that end where I've been judged from the outside, and we don't harbor any anger or resentment towards somebody who judges our experience, but instead we send them love and light and wish them well, because people can only meet you where they're at and they don't know what they don't know. So perhaps this video, you're watching this and you know that somebody in your life could benefit from understanding the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response, and you send it to them so that they can see what you're going through. Or maybe you're just too exhausted to explain it and you're like, just watch this video, this is what I'm moving through right now, because I also understand that. So what does the fight response look like? This one is where we can be easily defensive. You know, somebody could say something to us and we could immediately feel triggered and get snappy and fight back and wonder why they said what they said to us. The fight response can be that we are moving through a disagreement or an argument and we cannot access the rational part of our brain, and all we do is fight back, even though we know it is not going to go anywhere, and we just go in circles. The fight response could actually be you picking fights for no reason. A, because it feels like some sort of comfort, because that's all you've ever known is this dramatic fight within yourself and in your orbit and the circles that you've been in your whole life. Or you're just unhappy with life and everything builds a sense of anger inside of you, and you just need to put that energy somewhere. So your walls are up, your fists are high, and you're ready to go. That's the fight response that shows up in the body as a survival mechanism when our nervous system is completely shaken and shot. And they come up in ways that are not necessarily presented through a lens of awareness. They kind of just slide in. So it feels almost like it's out of your control. Flight is when we start to avoid things. We avoid the hard conversations. We avoid the dinner parties. We avoid the phone calls from the friends. We get on a plane and we just say, we're out of here. We've all said this. I wish I could just pack my bags and leave, because it feels like fleeing and flighting and leaving would make it so much easier to cope and move through whatever it is that we're moving through. So it's like this deep level of avoidance, and you might be avoiding your own feelings. You might be avoiding going to the doctors. You might be avoiding the conversation. You might be avoiding gatherings. It's almost like a sense of isolation comes over you in this flight response. Again, all a way to survive you. It is a survival instinct when this shows up. It's the brain's way of trying to move through the pain that you are going through, and it thinks that this is the best way to help you through it. So that's fight, flight, freeze. Freeze is kind of what I described in the beginning, where you almost feel like you're frozen in time. You're unable to access the tools that you used to be able to access. Time feels like it just passes you by. You're frozen in bed. It feels like you can't pull yourself out of bed. You can't have the fun that you wanted to have. It's harder to have conversation. You're in deep, deep isolation. You go to do something and you freeze. You zone out. You disassociate. You're stuck. It feels like you are stuck in time. All of these, the fight, the flight, the freeze, are so challenging. And then there's Fawn, and we don't often hear about Fawn, but Fawn is that people pleaser, that part that shows up to try and mitigate and manage all that is happening in our life. How can we show up and almost morph ourselves and change ourselves to make a situation or circumstance different? To be that people pleaser and show up in an act of service for somebody in order to smooth things over. We overcompensate for whatever is happening in order to feel better. So that's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And if there's one of these that you can identify that you are moving through, often when our nervous system is heightened, the way they show up, like I mentioned in the beginning, is unprecedented. Like they just slide in, and it's really felt on a subconscious level. We know that something doesn't necessarily feel right, but it's subconscious and is showing up as a way to help us try and control, manage, cope, feel better, and move through life. And if we look at it from the lens of evolution, there was a time where, back in the cavemen days, we had to fight for ourselves and fight off predators, or flight because a predator was coming. And then, of course, there had been moments of freeze. Fawn is more, I would think, new to the evolutionary side of who we are and the way our brains have adapted and know that people pleasing and the way we show up can actually help us. But especially the fight and flight part, this has been something that is so ingrained in a part of our nature. So this is why I'm saying a part of moving through these pieces is removing the judgment, because this is a part of evolution. This is a part of what has helped us survive. And in so many ways, these can be really helpful to us when we know when to pull them out and when to utilize them. It's when they start to seep into our subconscious and take over our reality that it truly becomes a problem and can actually impede on the relationships in our lives, or even cause judgment because people think that you're showing up as somebody you're not, or you're not showing up as you used to, or why are you showing up in that way? It really is our nervous system trying to calm us down. It's our nervous system trying to help us. So I have a list here of what can we do to help us move through the different elements and what can we grab onto. Number one, I think, is always looking at our inner child, because when we are in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn space, it's often the inner child that is showing up and taking a tantrum. It's fighting to have its way. It's like, no, leave me alone. It's running away. It's freezing. I'm not doing that. Or it's fawning because as a child, when something goes wrong, we often tune in. A child doesn't have the tools to understand that that energy belongs to someone else. All they could think of is it me, and how can I make this better? They will blame themselves. So a part of Fawn is really, how can I show up in order to make a situation better? And we see this with children. So when these pieces of the nervous system pop up on a subconscious level, I like to look at them like it's the inner child having a tantrum. And so one of the things that I say helps tremendously, and it doesn't matter what space you're in, whether it be one or the other, intellectualizing and understanding why they're showing up isn't going to help you. What is going to help you is, how would you talk? How would you speak to a child having that tantrum? What would you say to them? You might ask them, why are you angry right now? So tuning in and saying, why am I angry right now? You might reason with them. Okay, you're frozen in time. What do you need so that I can help you do this thing that you want to do? Do you actually just need a minute, and do you need to sit on the couch and just breathe for a little bit? Do you need to feel your feelings? Is this really hard right now? Do you need to be seen? Do you need a hug? Speaking to the inner child to understand what is going on and why this part is showing up so intensely, and providing that child what it needs, whether that be the hug, the compassion, the feeling into the feelings, is so important in order to move through these. So I would say that is step number one. What does that inner child need within that moment? Another part is just being aware. So recognizing that there is a trigger there and getting curious about that trigger, not being upset that the trigger is there, not trying to manage the trigger, not trying to change the trigger, but instead leaning into the curiosity of the trigger to recognize why it's showing up, and just having that awareness. Maybe you're not going to change the fact that you reacted right away, but you could start to see where it's coming from. And as we build that awareness, we'll start to see that we can start to diminish these responses through our awareness and being able to provide ourselves what we need, because we're getting curious. Why was that trigger there? What can I do to manage that trigger so it doesn't pop up so intensely anymore? Pausing to breathe. Our breath calms our nervous system down. Breath is a part of our vitality. It is a part of life. We know if we're doing fast breathing, we can get dizzy. We can feel kind of heightened. We can almost feel like on a natural high. But also when we're breathing slower, we know that our nervous system is going into this state of calm, right? Breath can offer us so much, whether that's to energize us, whether that's to de-escalate, whether that's to bring down a heightened feeling of anxiety within us. So just taking a moment to breathe within the response that you're feeling. And even if you can't recognize which one it is you're experiencing, what you can start to notice is there's this feeling, this uncomfortability in your body, or you don't feel like yourself. And that's where tuning into the breath, which is a really somatic exercise, can help down regulate what you're going through to bring you to a space of homeostasis where you can be more rational in your approach versus that heightened feeling from that nervous system being shaken. Communicating versus being aggressive, to be more assertive, to be clear in the way you articulate what you're moving through, to de-escalate the aggression that shows up. And you could know that this recommendation is immediately connected to that fight response. Assertiveness versus the aggression will really start to help. And you can course correct. You could be aggressive in the middle, and you can recognize, oh no, I'm being aggressive, and be like, what I actually mean is, I don't need this right now. You're being more assertive than aggressive. You can literally catch yourself in the middle of it once you start to acknowledge and learn these approaches and course correct. So it's never too late to course correct when you're in the middle of one of these experiences. Journaling your feelings is also really helpful. Journaling what you're going through, putting that energy somewhere in a non-judgmental space where you could write whatever it is that you are feeling. And journals don't even necessarily have to be writing. I have clients that say, like, I can't bring myself to write anything, or I don't know what to say. Scribble that energy. If there's that fight energy within you, you might need to just like scribble, stab, like just get that energy out within the journal. There is no specific cookie cutter way to the way your journal has to be. It could be messy, it could be ripped out pages, it could be one words, it could be doodles, it could be novels, it could be whatever it needs to be for you, removing the judgment attached to your journal. Confronting your own pain also and being able to sit within that discomfort is also something that can help you move through this, because you're generating safety within the body when it feels like everything is rocky and everything is shaky. So learning to sit in discomfort will really help. Grounding techniques, there are so many, whether that's barefoot walking, whether that's the breath work that I just spoke about, whether that's some yoga nidra, whether that's exercising. There are ways to allow yourself to feel into your body so you can feel back into this beautiful vessel, because when we are taken over, sometimes we don't feel like we're fully present. We don't feel like we're here. So that's why I say grounding techniques, somatic practices really help us be rooted in our state. I don't even know why I said rooted, but sometimes we do need to feel that rootedness. But I actually feel like, and that's like for another conversation, that's why I'm like, why did I say that? Because I have since had an awakening that we don't actually want to be rooted. We want to be able to flow, because if we root ourselves, we feel stuck. So let's change that. Not to be rooted, but to be more grounded in your experience. Because rooted means you're stuck in a situation, and you are never stuck where you are. You are not a tree. You are not stuck. We want you to be like a river, and we want you to flow. But that's for another day. Creating boundaries will really help as well, because as we start to develop boundaries, we can start to develop healthier relationships, so that as we move through these situations, these circumstances, these safety mechanisms, the boundaries can really place us in a space of autonomy where we don't feel like we're losing control. Because when we are in fight, flight, freeze, fawn on a subconscious level, it is that reach for control that we are going after. It is that safety that we are moving towards, where if we start to create boundaries within our lives, we feel like we have the autonomy over our lives. Boundaries are not actually us trying to keep ourselves safe out there. It's really keeping yourself safe in here, creating that sense of peace. Boundaries is so that you can generate peace within yourself, to develop a life that feels in alignment with where you want to go and who you are. Your self-awareness, your self-compassion in all of this is going to be your ticket to freedom. So starting to allow yourself the space to become aware and compassionate will allow you to access the tools that you need. Compassion from the space of no judgment, meaning even though I'm telling you all of this today and what you can do, this is all great. It is great to understand why this is there. It is great to know what to do, but when it is constantly showing up from a subconscious space, you're not able to access the tools that you need. So having self-compassion, to not necessarily think that you should be anywhere other than where you are, to be able to provide yourself with the forgiveness when you are going through these moments where you're not necessarily so proud of the way you're showing up, to offer yourself compassion, to ask yourself what you need, is how to move through this. Compassion, self-acceptance, the awareness to see it. And once you hear these things, you can't unhear them. So you have already begun your step to awareness by watching this video. And to understand that within you, there's this child, this inner child that just needs to be heard, that just needs to be seen. So if everything continues to pop up, if there's nothing that you can access, the number one thing you can do is to step back and be like, how would I speak to a child if they were showing up this way? And ask yourself what you need in this very moment to help move you towards how you want to show up. So share this video if there's someone who needs to hear a little bit about it and remove judgment. Lean into this video and offer yourself the compassion that you so deserve. And know that the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response is a survival mechanism, and it is so normal, and that there is nobody that can escape these survival mechanisms. Instead, they can serve us in the ways that we need to, and they are only problematic when they are moving in from a subconscious space and are disrupting our lives. So if you feel you are being disrupted, to start to lean into some of the tools that I've provided today so that you could be in your body and in your awareness.